Okay, we're live. No, I don't. Yes, sir. But if people have questions.
Sorry, yes?
Yes.
Oh, hi, good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for April 1st, 2025 here at Leah Jackson Cafeteria. I'm going to take a minute to go around and make introductions. I'm Chris Allen, Chair of the Committee, Board Trustee.
Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Dr. Nick Giarrusso, Director of Special Education at PBS.
Amy Ashley, District Treasurer.
Washington, CT Principal.
Hi, Patricia Simone, Leah Jackson Principal.
David Warner, Board Trustee.
Tracy Maris, Board of Ed member, current president.
Mr. Johnson.
Luke Johnson, Network Administrator.
Trustee Mans, Trustee Long.
Yeah, I'll go. Trustee is on your man's parent.
Julie Long, trustee.
Just to clarify for anyone watching this, there are more than 3 trustees here at this committee meeting, but it's more of an informational meeting and we do not plan to make any recommendations to the board or take any board action at this time. Mr. Johnson, if you can pull up the agenda briefly. Great. I want to announce a couple of dates. While we're waiting for that to come up, I'll say that we had a meeting on March 9th, on March 19th, which is available on the YouTube channel. It was a combined meeting of the Community Engagement Committee and the Finance Committee, at which meeting we went through the budget line by line, a budget appropriations report, comparing the proposed budget to the budget for the current year, 24-25. We will take a similar tack tonight to see if there's any unanswered questions. But if additional people don't log in or join us here in person, I don't expect there to be a lot of new questions, but you can always, if you go up to page 1, please. You can always, right here under section 1, email questions to budget@greenburghcsd.org, and Ms. Raymond or her staff will answer any questions that you have. Just in that same section, I'll note, oops, I forgot to take out tonight's meeting. I'll note that the budget will be adopted April 22nd at the board regular meeting. The budget hearing is May 6th at 6:30 p.m. for work session. And then the budget vote is May 20th, 2025 from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That is not the right drive. That's why April is there. It would be with one dated April 1st. I just showed it. Sorry. Should be Finance 2025-0401. Did it not get to you?
1 second. Sorry.
What did you say? That wasn't the right one.
Not that the right drive.
Wrong agenda.
Yeah, sorry.
Missing the information I wanted to share.
Oh my God, I think you were right.
No.
They're not seeing what we're seeing.
Oh.
You see it now?
Yes, I see them.
Share. Okay. So if you just scroll down so we can see number 3. So I just also like to point out to the voting public information on voting. The full public notice would be available where we notice our official details, which would probably be the Journal News and the and another document, but additional information for full reading of the public notice, you can go to the meeting agenda for March 25th, 2025, or ask the district clerk for more information. Pertinent information from the public notice is that the deadline to register to vote is May 15th. Contact the district clerk or the Westchester County Board of Elections. As you can see there, there are dates for when the application for absentee ballots begins and ends, and when military ballot applications need to be returned by April 24th, and when we need to have the absentee ballots in hand, which is by 5 p.m. on voting day, May 20th. That's in hand, whether delivered by the voter's agent or by mail. Any questions? Like I said, please contact district clerk at greenburghcsd.org. So now we'll go back to budget documents, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Raymond. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to point out as a preface, and then just open it for questions.
Do you want to look at the last board
Right.
presentation?
Mr. Johnson, it's that one right there, March 25th.
Can you show that as a PowerPoint?
And then Luke, I don't know if we're supposed to say anything, but we don't see anything.
I see it.
I see budget presentation. Do you see?
Here, there.
Oh, you're lying.
Okay, now I do. Yep. Okay, thank you.
That's what we have for Ms. Raymond.
That's the last board meeting. So that's it. Okay, so at the last board meeting, from the finance and CEC meeting, it was asked to show this budget in the 3 parts: the administrative, the capital, and the program. So New York State requires that the budget be presented in these 3 components. Go ahead. Yeah, okay. Go back. The administrative component covers all of the administrative costs such as school board expenses, superintendent's office, all other administrative costs such as the business office, all of the principals, directors and their offices, salaries and benefits, data processing, public information, legal fees, and property insurance. The capital component includes everything for buildings and grounds that relates to all school facilities, including debt service, any tax certiorari claims, court-ordered judgments, salaries and benefits for all of the custodial staff, any service contracts, equipment that's purchased, supplies, and all utilities. And then the program component is the largest of all 3 components. This is where all of the instruction is housed. It'll cover everything from teacher assistants, teacher aides, nurses, OT, PT, speech pathologists, guidance counselors, social workers, nurses, etc. All of the salaries, supplies and materials, equipment, textbooks, tuition, and BOCES expenditures.
Ms. Raymond, I was asked after the last meeting why busing is in
Busing is,
component. Is it?
no, busing is considered under the program component because it's busing of our students, which is under instruction.
Okay, and that's optional.
No, that's not optional. This is,
Busing is not.
oh, you mean, is it optional where it's budgeted for?
No, it's busing in general.
Well, busing would go by your school policy. Okay, next one. So the 3 components here, I show you what the 25-26 proposed budget compared to the 24-25 actual budget is. You'll see that the administrative component has gone up a little more than $200,000 for next year. Capital component has gone up by $1.6 million, and the program component has gone up approximately $2.2 million. We're proposing a budget of $84,158,490, which is a little more than 3%, about 3.64, I believe, percent increase. Then if you take this and break the program component down so you can see it by school. You'll see here that we listed the early childhood program, Lee F. Jackson Elementary School, Highview Elementary School, Richard J. Bailey, and Woodlands Middle High School to show you the comparison of what was actually budgeted for this school year compared to what we're proposing for next year. Short and sweet presentation, and then if anybody have any questions.
Any questions on that budget? So we will go back to the 25-26 budget appropriations report.
The second. That's because it's photocopied. So this is exactly the same line by line budget that was presented at the previous Finance Committee / CEC committee meeting. Want to go page by page again?
Well, I think since we have a lot of usual suspects, I'll ask the group, do we want to go page by page again? Or
No, but
want to ask our questions and jump directly
So-
there?
After the last meeting, or maybe during it, I don't know, I was asked about the special education budget since you're here. We might as well ask you. I was asked, I believe it was 11 million for next year, I might be saying it.
Yes.
But I was, it is?
Page 26.
I don't know my memory of it. Wonderful. Okay, so page 26. 11,394,000, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So I was asked if there's some services that can be provided in-house as opposed to sending out of districts. And if there's any savings that can be had.
Good question. So, in the short answer is that that's something that we're always looking at with all of our students that get that are in out of district placements. They are in that placement for a singular school year.
Okay.
That was determined based on committee on special education recommendation, and it goes year to year. So in the process involved in that is that we do have a overseer, both myself and Heather Digg, obviously at the top of that. Then we also have Dr. Lindsay Sharon, who serves the capacity of out of district school psychologist. She runs servicing as a point person with all of the different schools that children are placed within, and has a process of being able to progress monitor the students, serve as a liaison between the program and the district, answer questions if there's need for program reviews. She also goes out to site and does site visits at least one each part of the year for all the students that are out of district. So we're able to be present in these schools and have an opportunity to not only work with staff, but monitor progress, see the kids in those settings. All of that is to be able to have a level of accountability and transparency with the programs, make sure that the programs are meeting the students' needs, and also determine, when those opportunities do exist for students to come back in district. Those are things that we are obviously working toward. That is an ongoing process where we see those indicators of success, where we have a dialogue with student families to be able to, set that stage and set that expectation. And that happens fairly regularly. So in the time that, in the last, say, 3-year period, in overseeing the department, there have been several examples of that. You have the churn on one side of students that graduate, and then obviously exit. And then you have also the ability to bring students back, which we've done a nice job of through over the last several years. I think there was a point in time where the out of district caseload was hovering in the mid-30s, and at one point in the last 12 months, it was down to in the high teens. So there's right now I believe it's in the low 20s, and it is based on student needs. So there is some fluctuation because you can't control certain factors like students coming into your district, which has happened multiple times over in just the last few weeks, where we've had students from other districts that were outplaced by their home district prior to transferring to Greenburgh, and now we assume that placement to determine would we have something internal, within our home schools that we would be able to offer that would be an appropriate setting, but oftentimes circumstances surrounding why they were outplaced to begin with necessitate that we would do the same. So there are a lot of various factors, but certainly at the heart of it, we're always looking to educate all of our students in district to the best of our ability. And when they do go into out of district placements, it is singular year to year, with the goal being that we would love to obviously bring it back whenever applicable.
And so I'm sorry, two more questions. When I look on page 26, on the second line, I think it's A2250.470-01-40, special education admin tuition. So that's when we're paying tuition out of district.
That is partly for that.
Partly.
So that code encompasses a variety of expenditures
Okay.
that you would be including out of district tuition into New York State approved programs, but also several other factors. Bill backs that the district would receive when New York State updates their rates. They're always a year behind in that regard. There's also like summer maintenance costs for students that are in residential placements, and other county and state costs that come in that we're responsible for that would be related to tuition, and would be pulled out of that code. Also, a few other factors as well, but all of it is under that umbrella, but it's not exclusive to just the out of district costs.
And my last question for you is, so thank you for answering, is special ed admin OC special ed. So that's 4 lines there.
Correct.
2250.494-01. Okay, so that says 1.3 million for next year. Is that right?
No, 1.3 million, yeah.
What does that?
There are a multitude of options. First, all of these would be New York State approved programs, unless there was a set of circumstances where you would be looking at a non-New York State approved program, and that's a separate conversation. It doesn't apply to very many students. But what that line item would refer to is when a student is in a BOCES program, and that would be through, in our district, we place into North Westchester BOCES, obviously Southern Westchester BOCES, and Rockville BOCES. And when we are looking at starting an added district process, we lean on those. We always are applying to all of those BOCES locations for a variety of reasons. They have a multitude of programs that are the specialty type of programs that typically the districts are looking for when they are faced with looking for an added district program. So those expenditures on that line item would be directed to BOCES.
So between 1.6 and the 1.3 together, we have somewhere between the high teens and low 20s for placement. Or is it high teens, low 20s for residential placement?
No, it's all included.
All included, okay.
And yes, correct. It's in the low area of the 20s at the current home. And again, it fluctuates. Several of those students are earmarked to graduate. We have several other student circumstances in progress where there's going to be other potential students added to that caseload as time goes on, which is just a natural evolution of how that how that process kind of works.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, anticipated moving into the district, which I noted. So
That's just based on like history.
Or you have this year.
well, sure. Yeah, certainly it's historical. There's also several families that are that are in dialogue with the department where
Okay.
they give you advance notice that they might be coming in.
Okay.
Things of that nature happen where you just get transfers, and when those transfers happen, that process would still be looked at the same way we would with a student that would be in any of our home district schools, where we would look at analyzing the IEP, communicating with the prior school district, reviewing all of the evaluation and educational data that we have, going to visit either with the family. Sometimes we bring them in with their students and we'll meet with them a district office, and when possible, going to visit the school that this child will be at. wherever they might be placed by their, most recent district, to be able to assess the needs of the child and determine whether or not we would have an in-district placement. Because there are certainly school districts that do not have as robust of a special education continuum as Greenburgh does. And therefore, there are times when just because a student might have been outplaced in one district, it wouldn't necessarily necessitate the need for that in Greenburgh. So there are times when students come in with that designation and we're able to place them successfully within one of our, schools and programs. But we'll make that determination. Other times we would adopt the out of district placement as well. And again, all of that is in a singular, in a singular year that we're in.
Right, yeah.
Just like to point out, Ms. Raymond, you'll correct me here, since we've been with the district, the state has reduced the cost share element for out of district placements from 30-ish% paid by the state to now it's basically nil. It's not nil yet, but the House and the Assembly and the State Senate are in disagreement on what to advocate for, so I doubt there'll be any change in the.
But it
I
has
think the
gone
Senate
down.
wants to do away with it entirely.
Yes.
So the outlook isn't good for, we're hoping and advocating for a while that we'd be able to increase that reimbursement from the state again, but the outlook isn't good for that.
Right.
I'll cross our fingers and continue advocating.
To that point as well, residentially, they've raised the responsibility on the district responsibility. So that's been also looking at that. So on both ends, districts have to, obviously account.
And that's state funding.
I ask a question similar to what President Bears asked. Are we looking at students as a group to see if there are services that the district should bring in house that would therefore change the need places to join?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, we certainly engage in that in a multitude of ways. So the first thing that we do is analyze the students, down to student level and look at trends to be able to try to guide determinations of what we might be able to do to better support students in certain programs. So an example of that would be that we have a growing post-COVID population of students that are in self-contained classes in the early elementary level. When we've done an analysis of the student profiles, there is a neurodiverse student profile that would be within our self-contained 812 programs. And what we've done to try to meet the needs of those students is bring curriculum into the district, which we've done this year is the first year. It's essentially like a year zero of implementing what's called the STARS Links curriculum. And it has a applied behavioral analysis, ABA, centered approach to working with children, which was a much needed void that we were able to add to that part of the continuum. So some districts that don't have curriculums like that, and that would be a gold standard curriculum that out of district programs would offer to try to meet the needs of that student population. By bringing that curriculum in district, we're able to better meet the needs of that student population, and then also try to, be able to have less of a need to possibly consider alternate programs because of that void existing. I know.
And to build on that, and ideally, it was suggested to us years ago, and then if we're one of the few districts that have that, to hopefully attract students from other districts to come here. This,
Which we do have examples of that right now. We do have several students in district right now where their home districts are paying Greenburgh tuition because we have programs to be able to meet those children's needs that their home district doesn't have. And that's obviously an example of that point. And then in a broader context, we make our budgetary recommendations and determinations of within special ed what we would like to, ask for staffing, certain types of related service providers, and the like to be able to continue to grow out and build our capacity to be able to, meet the question that you're asking.
Is there someone dedicated specifically to get that money back from other districts?
Yeah, there's an infrastructure for that. It's determined through the state determines the rates. So Greenburgh has a rate that we would then, charge, and it's just
Like someone in our district that followed up.
we do that in conjunction, special education in conjunction.
And
with
the
business
business.
Yeah, absolutely. We bill monthly to the districts that we have that relationship with, and that all works very smoothly.
the one we talked about before we turned on the camera, which was, you know, has all the flying circus at the federal government resulted in us not getting any money?
Not today, no.
Government budget on the Department of Education, and had all that money from various sources, right?
Okay.
So the American Rescue Plan money, the gear, the ESSER, all that money from the pandemic, we got everything back. We used it, we applied for it, Amy got it. We didn't wait on it, and we didn't defer any of it, which you were allowed to do for another period of time. And those people that are now fearful of getting that money, they may not get that money back. And if you remember, even though we did spend some on salaries, we slowly started putting those salaries back in future budgets.
Right.
So that we wouldn't take a huge hit, but the majority of the money we spent was on one-time hit.
Yeah.
Such as the ventilation, where a lot of schools bought positions with it and now either had to lay off or struggle to find
Local districts.
right, how they're going to. I was contacted towards the end of last week and yesterday by Senator Latimer. This sounds funny to say that. His office put out a survey of here's what it says that you would get in ESSA and IDEA money. Do these numbers look right? I had Amy respond to that because they're now fighting for all the Westchester schools to make sure we keep that money. So they just wanted verification of those funds so that now they're going to do something on their end of the state.
So to follow up on that point, ESSA is different than ESSER and
Yes.
IDEA, so those are Department of Ed funds, if I'm not mistaken, which is also
IDEA's
in the ed.
Nick.
Does that all get managed to the DOE? At the federal level? Who knows what it would be, but
That goes to the state, right? Right.
that's the state. Okay. So the question is. Similar to that question, we've asked this every month and there's a lot of unknowns, there still continue to be unknowns, but we'll see if there's anything new. We know any of that money is under threat. Have we submitted for expenses to date? Just in case they say we're not gonna give any more. Are we up to date on our submissions for reimbursement or did we get traditionally to the end of the year?
No.
So everything.
Up to date. And we have had,
Service provided through.
I would say, 2 state audits on some of these funds. One, Amy, myself, and the rest of the central office went through this huge audit. We were what was considered Part B, but they broke the state up, and it took us weeks, but we passed that with flying colors. And then we thought we were done. And it was just a couple months ago, all of a sudden Amy and I got another. So what happens is the state has to answer to the federal government. Because if you remember, the money came from the federal to the state divvied it out. State doesn't have the manpower at SCD to monitor these funds, so they're relying on the schools to answer literally a packet like this of questions. And they have one person that is sitting and entering all the data in from all 760 something schools. We got ours done and it was accepted. So both rounds we've already done. It's been accepted. Those schools that did not get it done, chance are risking losing their funding.
There was a question that came the other day. Okay. All right. Well, let's just finish out the federal questions. Medicaid revenues, I believe our district is now, submitting for Medicaid reimbursement, dollar amount.
So we budget about $100,000 every year. Last year, I believe we approved 121,000. We go through, Nick goes through a use management advisory group to do that billing for us. They help us with that. No, that's Kenny. That's Kenny. That Mag helps us with staff.
Mag had previously.
Right, Mag does it. So we use two different, we specialize in maximizing the funding for the districts.
So we do, so Medicaid does get. $1,000.
Correct.
And again, after the last meeting, which is, the question was raised, how much money do we get from the state? How much money do we get from the feds? Just in the worst case scenario, all of that disappears, that we would have to shoulder in the general fund for our reserves.
That,
Worst case scenario.
I'm thinking maybe 3 million. It's in the millions
For both total.
in total. I think it's like, yeah.
Lines or things that seem to be unanswered last time.
Well, last time, and the reason I asked, well, I asked all the administrators to come, the special ed questions, but then the questions that people had about STEAM, out. So in the budget that I inherited, there are codes specifically for, it'll say out, it'll say STEAM. It's not that you're limited to those dollar amounts, you know, like give an example, there's $500 in a special outline. Like, how do you use your budget to fulfill all of that if you needed more money than that in that specific code?
And looking at it, looks like they were set up by.
Like page 2021.
Yeah.
Because we still have
Page
that.
20, look at, on like page 20, page 20 or 21.
Yeah, and you're right, that was the question.
Yeah, so put it like a 19. That's the 50s.
Okay, you wanna look at a 450 code.
It's broken up by parts.
So if you see 20, on page 21, there's a code, and I know it's not your code, but like 2110 45004, arts, music, and out supplies.
And it had ELL, IB, and world language.
Right.
And it's Steve.
The general question could be, how do we know, who decides, how do the principals know what gets taken out of those codes, and therefore, how often do the principals?
Well, they know what, they see their codes, and it's their offices that would put the purchase orders in.
And that's where it's coded, or it's coded?
So that's coded, it's coded from their offices and then comes to business office for the last approval.
And then make up something. So let's say you want to buy pencils. The purchase code, the purchase order goes into pencils, and they,
So
whoever
this,
in their office.
the stand back would put in the purchase order, or Alexia Pilata would put in the purchase order. It then goes to Ms. Simone for approval, it goes to Dr. Njoku for approval, then it comes to me for final approval as purchasing agent.
So then going to the general thing, because the parents ask them, so if there's access to the budget on a fairly regular basis, you know, what's left or what's available to do. To purchase a special thing for a special project, or to possibly fund part of a field trip, which is the question. Get asked, that their budget is accessible.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just once a year when we're doing budget planning. You know, general question. Mr. Ray, if you want to specific question.
No, I do remember the question. It was the last meeting, and I think they started with inquiring about the arts, music, and out. And wondering like how, you know, each building, they had that included. And then how do you cover out, you know, they started having conversations like how do you cover out instruction, Because in one building, it was a certain amount, and in Bailey, there's 3 different out classes. When Leo Jackson and Highview, I think it was the same budget. So you're trying to figure that out, and then we said, well, out should really come out of the general curriculum budget anyway. So that's when we realized it was different. It looks like it's bucketed based off of an old structure of like the directors back in like 2019, right? Before, because it's E&L, IB, world, arts, music, and L, and then the STEAM. It's actually 3 separate buckets. But the principals have flexibility with,
They can transfer.
yeah,
Just for a DCT, we don't have alcohol. But we have different funding sources, DPS, state grant, and start grants, special ed. So we have different funding sources, one is that we go.
To clarify to the general public, those special funding sources are usually coming from the federal funds budget. They're not part of the general budget that we look at here. So you'll see in these 2110 codes, you'll see ECP has some money for supplies, Steve did that, and the rest of it is most likely coming out of the funds, not here. So it's not this way on the money, it's just there's different pots of money.
Right.
Trying to,
Different bucket.
and we're all facing away from this, so who knows if
I don't know if
the open public is hearing this. I'll also just note that, even though it's called out because of the former structure, the curriculum is the curriculum. Theoretically, there should be a distinction, like here,
That's
the
what-
supplies and then outside of other supplies. Right. We're all learning the same material, different methods or different speeds, maybe different supplies.
and the materials are the same.
What's the cost of the out assessment in that budget line?
There is the assessment, no, that would come out of Dr. Joe code.
Where is that?
What,
Dr. Joe?
2010, 2010, page 3, 4, or maybe page 10.
Oh. Page 11. So the STAR assessment, those assessments be coming through those contests and from.
It could come through BOCES both here also. Like Science 21, that comes out of BOCES.
Okay, so this is why I really have Jackson. Okay, so.
That would come under 16E or 2630. If it's short.
What else came up? Let's see. But I feel like you talked about that, we talked about that. That if, I'll repeat it here, what I understood, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Raymond, that if we were to extend the distance that someone needs to live, right now it's half a mile for young kids and a mile for. I believe it's a mile for the older kids, but maybe it's not exact, don't quote me, but if we were to extend it
Have to be a vote.
longer, there would have to be a vote, but then that would also affect
Transportation.
some sort of transportation aid, right? You said that would have a direct effect on the number of,
Yeah, it's called not allowable pupil decimal units.
that's what you said. And it would be affected, so,
And we tried before.
and you tried it before, and what happened?
It failed.
Okay. Good to know.
So I can confirm, half a mile for grade 6 or lower, 1 mile for grade 7 through 12. For students with special.
I don't know, I'm trusting, I just reminded me that. Right,
Right,
sidewalks.
that's what Frank said. It was
Oh, but we have sidewalks
problem
now.
because there weren't sidewalks.
Okay,
But just to clarify, because we were all saying the same thing at the same time, sometimes we do bus in distances that are shorter than the minimum requirements because of safety issues, more specifically the lack of sidewalks in some areas.
And we are required to bus up to 15 miles? No,
Children attending private and parochial,
no,
children attending private and parochial schools, same as above, are subject to 15-mile maximum. If anyone wants to look at the policy, it is policy 5720, transportation of students.
thank you, policy queen. So if the special needs is 50 miles,
That is,
Yes.
is that right? So 15 and 50,
1.5 for private and parochial.
right,
5-0.
and 5,
Private,
oh,
you know, family election to do so.
right.
And by applying by
April 1st,
April
today,
1st, today. Right now. And
unless you move into the
5-0.
district and we're already transporting there, then you can.
And 5, 0.
um,
That, I'm sorry, does the 50 include out of state or the 15 include out of state? I don't know if, yeah, Connecticut.
yeah, because we're within borders of
Yes,
both sides, so it is a, it defaults to our district, state policies that you have to first start to try to find a New York State approved program. So if it happened to be outside the scope, district would have a decision to make. It would really be student centered because the circumstances would be taken into consideration of what that child needs, why are they in an out-of-state program, and then you go from there with it. And it might very well be a situation that would trigger an in-state search to try to find a commensurate program. And it would be, taken from that end.
I'm sorry, I have a couple more questions, only because transportation came up as one of the other higher areas in the budget, right? Do we join, so if we have private parochial schools, do we join with other districts
If we can,
if we can? Same thing with special education schools?
if we can. That we're always talking, not we, Frank is always talking, even with Royal Coach, if you have just one kid that we're bringing, does anybody else, can we piggyback off of somebody?
And then we pay like X percentage of that. Okay. If we have student David going just by yourself to one school, we're not sending a whole bus with just
Correct.
student David by himself.
Right, if other
Unless
schools
there's
are,
no other way.
unless there's no other way.
And I jumped to code 2330 for Mr. Johnson, that's on page 26. Here, so it's here, the summer school instruction, we budgeted 64,000, again, some of the things I know, I'm just confirming. We budgeted 64,000 for some school salaries on instructional supplies, and that's in addition to any federal funds
Correct.
that we get.
Yes.
So is this because our costs are higher than the amount of federal reimbursement, or is this because we capture some kids who don't necessarily qualify for the federal funds, but we're trying to give them AIS support?
Right.
What's the,
This is our AIS, this helps with our AIS program.
so academic intervention services for kids who may not be required
Right.
to attend summer school, but who the district really wants to help to get a leg up and not have.
Keep the learning going, right?
Learning going and hopefully.
Or keep them on the same even field.
Just trying to scroll through that long. Let's do. See what clarified, if anyone else has questions, please jump in.
So when staff comes and goes, like we have a teacher that leaves mid-year, right? When that happens, does that salary get reabsorbed? Salary benefits get reabsorbed until that position is filled again?
Yeah.
Yes. So. Wait a minute, So the salary is reabsorbed to the position clothing, but we pay a sub, does that come out of a different budget, or does that come out of like?
So that, well, it depends, the sub comes out of a sub code, but on day 31, when it changes, it goes up to that code.
Benefits and stuff, so that's a secret.
Correct.
Go back to the 2110, page 22. If- Page 21, 22.
Yes, so.
This is coming
in-
multiple times.
Yeah,
over the last
so
few years, so.
in every one of the elementary schools, under the 2110 450. So for example, Ms. Simone, I'll take your school, 2110 450 03 0000, your materials and supplies LFJ. See how that increased by $2,500, page 21? See, it went from 30,000 to 32,500. That 2,500 is for field trip expenses.
Do we do a line for field trips or no?
I stuck it in there so I wouldn't forget, but yes, I can do a separate line. I just haven't had a chance to create that line. I have to have Amy create it for me. For internal controls, I can't be doing that.
Okay.
But I stuck it in here so I know it's there.
Yeah, I think parents just.
No, that's
go on
fine.
field trip.
And we'll, yeah,
And
and
they
we will
try to
do it,
figure out
but,
where it comes from.
right, each elementary principal,
We'll have the.
will have it, and but that's where it's housed right now.
And then how do you,
Clarify, let's say you don't need as many supplies this year. Theoretically, that could still be money in that fund, could still be, other monies in that fund could still be
That's
used
completely
for-
up to the principal's discretion how to use it.
And in the past, if we wanted family of performance, Catherine would use some of that art money to
Right.
bring in the marionettes.
Right, right.
There's money in the SEL to bring in the 70s.
Right.
Done. You know, I know with district by SEL day and try to, you know, have the assembly and utilize that money.
Do those district events, sorry, so do they come out of the district budgets or do they just each school? contribute a little bit?
There are-
For those district wide events like Steam Night and.
Steam, they can take out of the Steam code.
as she said.
Those are during the day, I know that we have on the county. CL day where,
Yeah.
you know, last year we brought in a performance and.
And I know that there were Title I money allocated to SEL.
Yeah, so does that come out of,
Yes.
so it comes out of district one?
No, it could be both. It could be Title I, which is federal and general fund. I know that money was budgeted under Title I for SEL activities, which is federal.
But to go back to this field trip, so I can only find the extra money that you added to supplies under the elementary.
Yep.
Is that for the high school's a little different?
High school is up to, right.
And then, I know you'll be asked, or I'll be asked, how did you come up with the numbers? So
So what I did was I took what the student population was and I multiplied by, I did $10.
Okay, and then, so student population. And then,
State line, and you want to go into a museum.
That's your discretion
So there are monies in different lines.
that you could use, correct? Yep. You wanna go to the children's museum, somebody you could use your art music, if there's extra money there.
All of the, well, I'm not sure about your age groups, video about, so it's not wrong. But a lot, we don't want to like, do it your age, big textbooks, so that's why some of these lines, I'm sure, are reduced a little bit compared to previous years, but that's why we could use some of the monies for the experiential, whether it's more manipulative or trips. We're able to use those funds.
We have consumables for foundations, we have consumables that are on that. we have consumables in science 21, so every year goes, you know, into the materials.
Science 21 will go through both.
For those consumables.
Some of the consumables could go to textbooks. You have to look at each one to see, but yeah.
So I was thinking some of, especially the older grades, some of that stuff probably comes out of the, you know, the online stuff. The online grade probably comes out of the textbook department's budget or this by.
So
Somehow,
that
rather
usually,
than-
most of the time it comes out of BOCES,
Which is again, not.
because there's that
school-based.
online learning library.
Okay.
You could also, the trips people want to know about.
Well, there's, I think, have, 2855, which is at the end. Page 32. We discussed last time how, we're budgeting more now for non-instructional salaries, so 2855.160-08. And we said that's because there are additional sports and additional coach, so it's not instructional.
Special.
2855.150 is additional sports and additional coaches.
What page are you on?
Sorry,
32.
And then the 2855.160
I did
additional
that.
non-instructional salaries.
That was increased twofold. One, that is for the athletic trainer. And for the security that's needed at events that Mr. McCoy hires for, bookkeeper, scorekeeper. Those kind of things.
And the athletic trainer was, there was already money for
If you
contractual
think-
part-time.
40208, I made 0 because I transferred it up to hire somebody.
Did we? This is a totally different meeting, I'm sorry. Did we ask for the breakdown of the expenditures for the
Yeah, I for the
Binghamton
band,
trip?
and I'll have that for you
Oh, we
once,
did, okay.
but I don't have all the figures for that.
So did we also pay? How did we pay staff?
It goes according to their contract, they get their hourly rate and or there's an overnight rate. The overnight chaperone rate.
Oh, for the team. Well, this is the coaches, do they get an overnight?
Well, there was security that was hired that monitored so kids did not come out of their groups.
Oh,
And then there were chaperones on the buses. All games that went up and back up.
So going back to the 2855.160, so the trainer was moved there. Fine with.
And I just based
additional
this,
security, but
all right, I
the-
based
the
this,
Sorry, the overtime is the line. So it's not including the it's not including the overtime, because that's the line where it's under. Okay, so it doesn't, sorry, I had thought maybe it just additional security.
so would we pay overtime or we pay hourly or overtime for sporting events? Is there like a written expectation of what the staff person is doing with the kids?
yeah, I would have to ask Mr. McCoy. For sports, what the protocols are. But also remember, in some of these lines is also, there was additional, like, for example, the flag football is like doubled in number, and they need an assistant or another
Right.
coach, so I budgeted for those kind of things that Mr. McCoy. He anticipated at least 2 positions that were going to have to be added because of the numbers.
That's in the first line.
No, it could be in one of the first 2.
Depending on what union.
Yeah,
they're in.
correct, correct,
But not-
The one in Chelsea.
correct.
75.
Okay.
Well, something in security.
Everybody's really important, I'm sure.
So is there, okay, I'm sorry to go back to sport security. So is there a security non-sports hours, where does security fall?
You mean for overtime?
No, in general, does it fall like in the individual schools?
It's in
budgets?
2110s.
The 2110.
The salaries for security are 2110, 160. Hold on, hang on, 2110, 160.
Like 150-08, the on page, teaching regular school, high school, non-instructional.
No,
No.
it's a 160. 166. No, that's further down, hourly noon aides are 167.
So. Okay, so those are salaries, and then the overtime,
There is an overtime line, but most of the overtime comes out of the sports.
it's because of, so like here doesn't have overtime.
Sometimes they have it. Not as much as the high school.
Cheaper or more efficient to have, no, you do, you stagger them.
We've staggered the high school now to avoid all this overtime.
Right, that's what I was.
Yes. Yes, they're on a rotating
Right,
basis.
some people start.
So like you'll do a week of 9 to 5. And then they rotate that. So if there's 15 of them, every 15 weeks you're doing 9 to 5. So we tried to stop the 4:30 and 6 o'clock. There's no more 6 o'clock plus overtime. We're stopping the 4:30 overtime by changing people's hours. No, they're monitoring the area. They were, they are no longer.
No monitor.
And I asked for somebody to be in the booth at the high school at least till 4:30, because we still do have people coming in and out.
Right.
So we have somebody there at least till 5 o'clock.
And to your point, the monitors on the bus are under the country. On fair transportation lines, because they're going to coaching to the not.
You got it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this year. So this year we hired, did we hire or we about to hire? I get confused, an occupational therapist because we were having trouble securing and did not staff
I
from
think
our vendors
This fun, right?
to service our children on a time basis.
Is that gonna be more efficient?
Yes, that individual is gonna be starting at the end of April.
Are we having, just as far as planning ahead, and I know it's not in the budget per se, because that's the only position we have this year, but are we not naming names of vendors, are we okay getting service on time now for other things, or is that going to be something we need to be careful about?
Also, to be fair, yeah, it's from a budget perspective, we're fine. It's not a matter of budgeting, it's a matter of, access to the clinician. So, for example, post-COVID 2 years ago, it was very, very difficult to find nursing. And we were having a difficult time being able to, if we needed a licensed practical nurse to cover for one of our district LPNs, that was very difficult. We had to expand our roster of nursing vendors that year. From what would normally be 2 to 3 vendors to at one point that year, we had 6 to 7 vendors because we had cast the net into Manhattan and done things that were really outside the norm due to the shortage that existed within that particular industry.
And for people listening, when we say casting, then we have all the vendors, we only pay them if we use them.
Correct. Absolutely. So exactly. We have an RFP process that governs the whole thing, but when, after that process, you can always, get board approval for additional vendors to have more options should you need it. So when we're seeing the trends, we're able to expand our bench, so to speak, to be able to have more options to try to meet student needs quickly. what is happening in the last 12 to 18 months is a nationwide general trend of PT and OT shortages. And we felt that at the state level, local level in New York as well, and in Westchester. So I know that counterparts in other districts were dealing with the same dynamics of trying to find PT and OT. So we did have a little bit of a gap as regards to services earlier in the year. We filled that gap. All students and all services are being met with fidelity at the moment, and compensatory services are being provided. And I guess the answer to the question would be, as you see the things like that emerge, we do everything we can to try and meet the need. Like for the OT circumstance, we had our RFP vendors that were unable to meet our need. We canvassed up to a dozen different vendors to try to find who would and have our coals on the fire, so to speak, as many places as possible to try to meet that need as quickly as we could. So what we did in part to avoid that happening again, but it was also a fiscal conversation from an efficiency standpoint, coupled with rising in district numbers. Just specifically, we've had two of the largest increases in CPSC to CSC student populations over the last 2 years that we've seen on record.
We've seen it last year.
Yeah.
Right. The changing in the it has a trickle down effect. But when you add, like we did in Leah Jackson, an 812 program and a 1212 program, with that comes 20 students now that have a host of related services. So we saw increases in caseload demands, which also necessitated the need to be prudent in bringing on this additional clinician.
So therefore, I'm also trying to think of, who can we tell in our neighborhood area that might need help?
Sure.
They can lend someone out and they can give us a little salary share.
Sure.
But it sounds like we're at capacity.
It's more education committee questions, so I'll try to focus specifically on the finance of it, but are people looking at root causes of the increase in children in need of services and it being record setting now? And what to do differently in education to address that?
Sure. So there is a lot of research that exists on this.
Yeah.
I think that some of the prevailing thinking is that we obviously had, since the advent of public education, the biggest disruption to the system that COVID-19 provided. But students were out of obviously forced to do remote learning, especially at that early age. We're seeing that cohort now matriculate in to the K level the last 2 years from where they would have had opportunities to preschool education, pre-K, and they had that taken away. We've seen that in the K-12 population as well.
Well, yeah, the older kids, these guys were like infants.
Yeah,
right?
not having access to early intervention services to the same degree, having services who move remote, having lack of opportunity to be in daycare opportunities, and obviously preschool. By the time we're seeing that is something that definitely is having a collateral impact. Special education rates in the United States have gone up by 2 percentage points post-COVID, and there's a lot of research around the fact that those realities have had a direct effect on our ability to provide the level of universal interventions that we would normally be able to provide effectively to curb that number. So I think that we're getting back on track in that regard, and things are starting to normalize a little bit, but we are having to deal with that, collateral impacts of that still.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other finance questions? Okay.
Sorry, page 1213, 2020.161, secretarial tab. We touched on this last time, but when I was looking at it again, I was trying to, we had movement of people in agreement, so I believe you need salaries to where the people are moving or will move or kind of that. But I thought, when I looked at 2020.161-07, I figured maybe that got lumped into the 08 line, but I don't think it
No,
is, so I'm
it's-
wondering, that it's going to exist, so I'm wondering why it's down to zero.
It isn't, I corrected that from the last time. It was budgeted somewhere else, but it has been moved to that 07 middle school line.
Okay, no. But it's within this,
It is within the 2020 now. Yeah, I noticed that the last time also, and I found it, and I moved it to there.
but it doesn't change our bottom line.
No,
Is there any questions? Trustee Long, trustee Mans?
Bill Johnson, oh.
No, I'm okay.
I'm okay too.
You got everything, you're always thankful for. Is there anything, Mr. Washington, that you should be excited about, you're planning the next? It's early to ask.
Oh, the next budget, yes.
You've got events, fun events coming in soon. So you're. That, is there,
So,
is there a meeting within a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
15, motion is passed, meeting adjourned, thank you all.
thank
Day,
you.
vote on May 20th.
Thank you.